The smell of burnt garlic hangs in the air like an accusation. My knuckles are white on the steering wheel. Outside, rain slashes against the windshield, blurring the ostentatious iron gates of Grandfather Salomon's estate. Oakhaven. Sounds peaceful, right? It's a mausoleum, a monument to loneliness built with old money. And tonight, it's a trap. I haven't been here in Christ 3 years, not since Mom's funeral. And even then, I spent most of it avoiding the old man, like everyone else. Dad's Jaguar is already here, parked with its usual arrogant precision. Aunt Lydia's obnoxious pink Lexus SUV is wedged in elegantly beside it. Uncle Frank's sensible Toyota, like a pauper at the feast. We're all here. The prodigal children, summoned back to the patriarch's table, not out of love, out of obligation, maybe, or, more likely, the gravitational pull of the fortune we all know is about to be passed out like scraps. Guilt. Yeah, it's there. A low from under the roar of the engine. We did neglect him. After Grandma passed, something in Salomon just dimmed. The sharp, intimidating titan of industry became a quiet ghost haunting these 2 big rooms. Calls went unanswered. Visits were postponed, then cancelled outright. Too busy building our own lives, carving our own successes that felt pitifully small next to his empire. Easier to forget the man who built it all. Slowly crumbling inside these stone walls. The invitation arrived a month ago. Thick, cream cardstock. Elegant, spidery script his hand. He'd recognize it anywhere. A final gathering, it said, for a reconciliation. Before the end. Cryptic. Morbid. Classic Salomon. Dad scoffed, called it manipulative theatrics. Lydia muttered about the inconvenience. Frank just looked resigned. But we all RSVP'd yes. You don't say no to Salomon. Not when he talks about the end. Not when the will hangs in the balance like Damocles' sword. I kill the engine. The silence is startling, broken only by the drumming rain. Taking a deep breath that does nothing to settle the churning in my gut, I push open the car door. The air is cold and wet, smelling of damp earth and decaying leaves. The walk up the long, winding drive to the imposing oak door feels like a condemned man's last mile. The house looms, its many windows dark except for the warm glow emanating from the grand dining room at the front. Figures move behind the glass, sharp silhouettes against the light. My family, my blood, people I mostly tolerate. Henderson, the ancient butler, who seems carved from the same stone of the house, opens the door before I can knock. His face is a roadmap of wrinkles, impassive as ever, but his eyes they hold something new. A profound, unsettling sadness. Or is it resignation? He doesn't smile, just inclines his head. Master Daniel. They are assembled in the dining room. Thanks, Henderson. My voice sounds rough, unused. How is he? Henderson's gaze flickers towards the dining room door, then back to me. He's present, sir. A loaded pause. He has been looking forward to this evening. The way he says it sends a shiver down my spine that has nothing to do with the damp. He takes my dripping coat in silence. I straighten my tie, a useless gesture, and walk towards the light and the murmur of voices. Pushing the heavy door open feels like breaching a tomb. The scene hits me like a physical blow. The long, mahogany dining table gleams under the massive crystal chandelier, set with grandmother's priceless Limoges china and heavy silver. Candles flicker, casting dancing shadows on the panelled walls lined with portraits of stern ancestors. The air is thick with the competing scents of expensive perfume, cigar smoke from Dad's pre-dinner indulgence, and something else, something faintly medicinal, cloying. Lillet, funeral lillet. And there, at the head of the table, dwarfed by the high-backed chair, sits Grandfather Salomon. My breath catches. 3 years haven't been kind. He was always lean, but now he's gaunt, painfully thin, the bones of his face stark beneath papery, sallow skin. His once thick white hair is sparse, wispy. He seems diminished, swallowed by the dark fabric of his tailored suit, which now hangs loosely on his frame. But his eyes, those fierce, intelligent blue eyes, they burn with an unnerving intensity. They sweep over me as I enter, missing nothing. There's no warmth in that gaze, no grandfatherly affection, just assessment. And something else, something cold, calculating. Daniel, his voice rasps, weaker than I remember, yet still carrying that old undercurrent of command. You made it. Almost late. Traffic, grandfather. I mutter, sliding into the empty chair beside Uncle Frank, who offers a weak, sympathetic grimace. Always traffic, Dad booms from across the table, swirling a generous measure of amber liquid in a crystal tumbler. He doesn't look at Salomon. Or something. Good to see you, son. Though you look peaky. Working too hard. It's a dig, delivered with a fake joviality that grates. Lydia, impeccably coiffed and draped in something silky and undoubtedly expensive, sniffs. Daniel always looks peaky. Charles needs a good woman. Or a better tailor. She flashes a brittle smile at Salomon. Father. The table looks magnificent. Henderson outdid himself. Salomon doesn't acknowledge her compliment. His gaze is fixed on his own gnarled hands resting on the tablecloth. They tremble slightly. We are all here, he states flatly. Finally. Under one roof. He looks up, his eyes slowly tracing the faces around the table. Dad's florid impatience. Lydia's brittle perfection. Frank's weary anxiety. My own tense discomfort. It has been too long. An awkward silence descends, thick as the gravy boat Henderson is silently placing on the sideboard. Frank clears his throat. It is good to see you, father. You're looking. He trails off, unable to find the lie. Salomon's thin lips twitch in what might be a smile. Or a grimace. Don't insult my intelligence, Franklin. Or your own. We all know what I look like. We all know why you're here. He pauses, letting the uncomfortable truth hang in the fragrant air. But tonight is not about that. Not yet. Tonight, he rasps, leaning forward slightly, the effort visible, is about family. Such as it is. Henderson begins serving. Consomme. Clear, golden, steaming. Salomon watches, his eyes tracking the butler's movements with unnerving focus. As Henderson places a bowl before him, Salomon lifts a trembling hand. He adjusts the bowl slightly, his fingers brushing the rim. Then, with a deliberate slowness, he picks up his soup spoon. He doesn't start eating. He holds it, looking at it as if contemplating its weight, its purpose. Then, he coughs. It's not a loud cough. A dry, rattling hack deep in his chest. He turns his head away from the table, towards the window, a handkerchief pressed to his mouth. It's brief, but when he turns back, his eyes are watering slightly. He dabs at his lips with the handkerchief before placing it beside his plate. He doesn't apologize. He picks up the spoon again, dips it into the broth, and raises it shakily towards his mouth. My own spoon feels suddenly heavy. I glance around. Dad is already halfway through his soup, oblivious. Lydia is meticulously blowing on a spoonful, her brow furrowed in concentration. Frank is staring into his bowl, looking ill. Did they even notice the cough? Or did they just choose to ignore it? The faint medicinal smell seems stronger near Salomon. He eats slowly, meticulously. Each spoonful is a small ordeal. Between bites, he talks. His voice is a low rasp, forcing us to lean in, to pay attention. He talks about the house, about the gardens he no longer tends, about old business deals, about our grandmother Small, inconsequential anecdotes delivered with a quiet intensity. He asks questions, stilted, probing questions about our lives, delivered with a detached curiosity that feels more like an interrogation than familial interest. Dad answers brusquely, boasting about a recent merger, clearly eager to steer the conversation towards the future, his future, tied to the inheritance. Lydia talks about her charity galas and her daughter's, my cousin Sophie's, latest achievements at boarding school, her voice sharp with social ambition. Frank mumbles something about his accounting firm, his eyes darting nervously. I give monosyllabic answers about my design work, feeling Salomon's piercing gaze, dissecting my evasion. Throughout it all, Salomon intersperses his conversation with those small, dry coughs. He always turns away. He always uses the handkerchief. But it happens, again and again. After one particularly persistent fit, he pauses, breathing heavily, his frail shoulders shaking. Henderson materializes silently at his elbow with a glass of water. Salomon takes it, his hand trembling violently. Water sloshes over the rim to the pristine tablecloth. He takes a small sip, then another. He sets the glass down unsteadily, leaving a wet ring on the linen. His fingers linger on the cool crystal for a moment. "Clumsy," he murmurs, looking at the spreading damp spot. "Forgive an old man." He doesn't sound sorry. He sounds weary. And something else. Resigned. Determined. He pushes the glass slightly towards the center of the table. "Pass the salt, would you, Charles?" Dad, seated to Salomon's right, frowns. "Salt. In consomme, father. Indulge me." Salomon rasps, holding Dad's gaze with those unnerving blue eyes. "My tastes change." Dad shrugs, reaches for the heavy silver salt cellar. He picks it up, passes it across the tablecloth, his fingers brushing the damp spot left by the water glass. Salomon's eyes track the movement. He takes the cellar, his own skeletal fingers brushing Dad's for a fraction of a second longer than necessary. Dad pulls his hand back almost imperceptibly. Salomon ignores it, meticulously grinding a tiny amount of salt into his nearly untouched soup. He stirs it slowly, the spoon scraping against the porcelain. The soup course is cleared. A tense silence hangs as Henderson brings out the main course: roast beef, Yorkshire pudding, roasted vegetables. The rich aroma fills the room, momentarily masking the underlying medicinal scent. Salomon barely glances at the food. He seems focused solely on us, his audience. He pushes the conversation, probing deeper, asking about failures, about disappointments. He needles Dad about a past investment that went sour. He questions Lydia sharply about the real cost of her lavish lifestyle. He asks Frank point blank if Hay's happy. Frank looks like he might be sick. I feel exposed. He asks me about a project I abandoned years ago, a creative venture I thought he'd never known about, let alone remembered. "Why did you give up, Daniel?" he asks, his voice like dry leaves scraping stone. "Lack of conviction, or fear of failure like your father?" Dad bristles. "Now see here, father." A silence. "Charles." Salomon's voice, though weak, cracks like a whip. The force of it startles everyone. He glares at Dad, a spark of the old fire momentarily blazing in his sunken eyes. Then, the fire dies, replaced by that chilling intensity. "I am speaking to Daniel." He turns back to me, waiting. I squirm. It just wasn't viable, grandfather. "Market research. He cuts me off, a flicker of disdain in his eyes. "You used to create, Daniel. You used to see possibilities, not just obstacles. What happened? Did the world grind it out of you? Or did we?" His gaze sweeps the table again, encompassing us all in that way. "Did this family teach you only caution, only greed, only how to wait for this?" He gestures vaguely, encompassing the room, the wealth it represented. The accusation hangs heavy. Lydia looks furious. Dad is purple. Frank stares at his plate. I feel a hot flush of shame and anger crawl at my neck. He's not wrong. Not entirely. The constant pressure, the comparisons, the unspoken expectation to achieve, to secure the dynasty, it had ground me down, made me cautious, fearful. Salomon watches the reactions play across our faces. He seems satisfied. He picks up his knife and fork. They tremble violently in his grasp. He struggles to cut a small piece of beef. The knife scrapes loudly. He coughs again, a wetter, deeper sound this time. He turns away, handkerchief pressed firmly to his mouth. His shoulders heave. This fit lasts longer. When it subsides, Hay's breathing raggedly, his face a sickly grey. He wipes his mouth. Then, deliberately, slowly, he uses the same hand to pick up his fork, spearing the piece of meat he'd been struggling with. He brings it to his mouth, chews slowly, laboriously. He swallows with visible effort. He reaches for his wine glass, a deep, rich Bordeaux. His fingers tremble so badly the wine sloshes precariously close to the rim. He lifts it, not to drink, but towards the center of the table, gesturing vaguely. "A toast," he rasps, his voice barely audible. "To family, to reconciliation." We all scramble to pick up our glasses. The crystal chinks as we raise them. Salomon's arm shakes violently. Wine spills over his fingers, dripping onto the tablecloth. He doesn't seem to notice. His eyes are fixed on us, burning with that unnatural light. To understanding, he whispers hoarsely. To consequences, he brings the glass to his lips, taking a small sip. Wine trickles from the corner of his mouth, mingling with a faint pinkish tinge on the handkerchief Head used moments before. He sets the glass down heavily, leaving it smeared with crimson streaks. He doesn't wipe his mouth. He just stares at us, a faint, chilling smile touching his lips. Eat, he commands softly. Enjoy Henderson's cooking. It may be your last supper together. The food turns to ash in my mouth. The air crackles with unspoken dread. The medicinal smell is back, stronger now, mixed with the iron tang of blood and the cloying sweetness of the lila. The clink of cutlery sounds unnaturally loud. Every bite feels like a betrayal. Every glance Salomon casts our way feels like an indictment. He barely touches his own food. He just watches, and coughs, and touches things his water glass, the salt cellar again, when Lydia asks for it, the handle of the serving spoon, when the vegetables are passed near him. Dessert is a silent, excruciating affair. A rich chocolate tort. Salomon declines. He sips water, his breathing shallow and rapid. He looks exhausted, the intense fire in his eyes dimming to embers. Yet the calculation remains. When the last plates are cleared, he pushes back his chair with a scrape that echoes in the heavy silence. He stands, swaying slightly. Henderson is instantly at his side, a steadying hand under his elbow. It is late, Salomon announces, his voice a threadbare whisper. And I am tired. This reconciliation was illuminating. His gaze sweeps over us one final time, lingering on each face. There's no warmth, no forgiveness, only a terrible, weary finality. Henderson will see you out. He turns, leaning heavily on the butler. As he shuffles towards the door, he pauses, doesn't turn back. Good night, children, he rasps. Sleep well. You have much to think about. He disappears into the dim hallway, supported by Henderson. The door clicks shut behind them. The silence in the dining room is absolute. Then, chaos erupts. Did you see him? Lydia hisses, her voice tight with hysteria. He's practically a corpse. And that cough, it sounded wet. Of course he's ill. Lydia, Dad snaps, pouring himself another brandy, his hand shaking slightly. He's ancient. That's the whole damn point of this macabre dinner. Emotional blackmail from beyond the grave. But the blood, Charles, Lydia presses, her face pale, on his handkerchief, and his wine glass. Did you see? I saw a sick old man playing his final, pathetic card. Dad retorts, but there's a flicker of unease in his eyes. He glances at the smeared glass still sitting at Salomon's place. Did he touch things? Frank whispers, staring at his own hands. The water glass, he spilled the serving spoon. What are you babbling about, Frank? Dad demands. Contagion, Frank mumbles, looking genuinely terrified. He coughed everywhere, touched everything. He spilled his water. His wine, a cold dread, far deeper than guilt, begins to seep into my bones. Frank's words land like stones. The deliberate adjustments to the soup bowl, the trembling hand on the salt cellar past to Dad. The spilled water glass Henderson didn't immediately clean. The smeared wine glass. The coughing fits turned subtly towards the table, the room. The handkerchief used, then left lying. The way he touched things, lingering just a fraction too long. It wasn't clumsiness. It wasn't frailty. It was precision. It was distribution. Oh my God. Lydia breathes, her hand flying to her mouth. He wouldn't. Don't be absurd. Dad barks, but the color has drained from his face. He looks down at his own hands, the hands that passed the salt, that brushed the damp tablecloth, that lifted his glass after Salomon smeared his own. He's sick, not a monster, isn't he? I hear myself say, my voice sounding strange, detached. The pieces slammed together with horrifying clarity. The final gathering, the reconciliation, the insistence we all be here, physically present. The way he watched us eat, drink, touch everything he had touched. He said it himself. To consequences. The air in the grand dining room feels thick, suffocating. The lingering scent of roast beef turns suddenly nauseating, overlaid with the cloying liquor, and that faint, persistent medicinal odor that now smells like poison. We stare at each other across the wreckage of the dinner, the smeared glass, the damp salt cellar, the crumpled, stained handkerchief Salomon left beside his plate. Accusations hang unspoken, tangled with a dawning, visceral terror. Dad slams his brandy glass down. This is ridiculous. Mass hysteria. The old man's dying. Hayes bitter. He wanted one last jab. That's all. But his eyes dart around the table, landing on the evidence with fresh horror. He scrubs his hands unconsciously on his trousers. Lydia is hyperventilating, digging in her purse for a tissue, her perfectly manicured fingers trembling. He coughed right when Henderson was serving the soup right near the bowls. Frank just sits, hunched, staring at his untouched chocolate torte, as if it's radioactive. The water he spilled is water, and then asked Charles to pass the salt right through it. His voice is a monotone of shock. The guilt I felt driving here is obliterated, replaced by a chilling comprehension. This wasn't just neglect Salomon sought to punish. This was annihilation. He didn't want us to feel sorry. He wanted us to die knowing he had done it, that our greed, our indifference, had brought us to this table to consume our own doom. The fortune he dangled wasn't the carrot, it was the final, cruel twist of the knife we wouldn't live to feel. Henderson reappears silently at the door. His face is granite, but his eyes are red-rimmed. Mr. Salomon has retired. He instructed me to see you out. His voice holds no emotion, only a profound exhaustion. None of us move. We're frozen, trapped in the gilded cage of the dining room. Henderson, Dad's voice cracks. What's wrong with him? Truly. The old butler's gaze sweeps over us, lingering on the incriminating smears and spills. He takes a slow, deep breath. Mr. Salomon is under the care of specialists. They have named it Xylo's Marburg variant. He says the words carefully, as if they burn his tongue. Silence. The name means nothing to me. Lydia frowns. Frank just looks blank. Dad, however, pales further. Marburg, like the hemorrhagic fever. Africa. His voice is barely a whisper. Henderson gives a minute nod. A variant. Novel. Highly contagious. Airborne. Fomite transmission surfaces is significant. He gestures faintly towards the table. Incubation is rapid. Symptoms severe. Prognosis. He swallows hard, his composure finally cracking. Prognosis is universally terminal. There is no cure, only management. For the discomfort, the information lands like a bomb. Lydia lets out a choke sob. Frank makes a small, animal sound of terror. Dad sinks back into his chair, all bluster gone, replaced by abject horror. My own knees feel weak. Marburg. Images flood my mind. Biohazard suits, bleeding eyes, agonizing deaths. Universally terminal. He knew. I rasp, my throat tight. He knew. Henderson meets my gaze. The sadness in his eyes is bottomless. He has known for 6 weeks, since the diagnosis was confirmed. He instructed me to prepare for tonight. He was very specific. His voice drops to a tortured whisper. He said, it was the only legacy left that you would truly understand. The cruelty of it is staggering. The meticulous planning, the cold-blooded execution. He hadn't just invited us to dinner. Had weaponized his own dying breath, his own failing body. Had turned the silverware, the crystal, the very air we breathed into vectors of death. He murdered us. Lydia whimpers, tears streaking her makeup. Our own grandfather murdered us. Get out, Dad growls, surging to his feet, his face contorted with rage and fear. Get out, Henderson. Get out of this house. Henderson doesn't flinch. Of course, Mr. Charles, I shall fetch your coats. He turns and leaves, his posture rigid with grief and duty. Panic erupts. Lydia bolts for the hallway bathroom, retching sounds echoing back. Frank buries his face in his hands, shoulders shaking. Dad paces like a caged animal, muttering curses, rubbing his hands compulsively on his jacket. I stand rooted to the spot, staring at Salomon's empty chair. The image of him, frail and trembling, deliberately spilling his water, smearing his glass, coughing over the soup, burns into my brain. Not weakness. Control. Absolute, terrifying control. Head orchestrated our execution with the cold precision of a master strategist. Henderson returns with our coats. No one speaks. The silence is heavy with the shared, horrific knowledge. We shrug into our coats, like condemned prisoners. Henderson opens the massive front door. The cold, wet night air hits us like a physical blow. A stark contrast to the cloying, poison warmth inside. As I step onto the portico, Henderson's voice stops me. Master Daniel. He holds out a thick, cream-colored envelope identical to the dinner invitation. Mr. Salomon instructed me to give you this, all of you, to be opened after. After. The word hangs in the damp air. After Hay's gone. After we're gone. I take the envelope. It feels heavy. Ominous. Dad and Lydia snatch theirs without a word, practically fleeing to their cars. Frank takes his with trembling hands, his eyes hollow. I walk back to my car in a daze, the rain soaking through my coat unnoticed. The envelope sits on the passenger seat like a live grenade. I don't drive. I just sit, staring at the dark bulk of Oakhaven, the single light in what must be Salomon's bedroom window burning like a malevolent eye. Universally terminal. The words echo in the silence of the car. How long? Days. Weeks. How long before the fever starts? The headaches. The bleeding. Driving home is a blur. The streets seem unreal. Every pedestrian, every passing car feels like a potential threat. Did I breathe on someone? Touch a door handle? Am I already a walking bioweapon, courtesy of Grandfather Salomon? The guilt is gone, utterly consumed by a primal, all-encompassing terror. And beneath the terror, a terrifying ember of rage. He didn't just kill us. He made us complicit. He made us sit there, eat his poison feast, drink from his tainted cup, while he watched. Enjoy Henderson's cooking. It may be your last supper. Head told us. Head literally told us. And we'd been too blind, too greedy, too dismissive to understand. I lock myself in my apartment, strip off my clothes, throwing them in a frantic heap near the door. I scrub my hands raw under scalding water until the skin is red and stinging. I gargle mouthwash until my throat burns. It's futile. I know it is. The enemy isn't on my skin, it's inside me. Multiplying. The dinner replaying in my head on a sickening loop. The cough over the consomme, the trembling hand on the salt pasta Dad, the spilled water, the bloody wine glass, the deliberate touches. Days blur into a nightmare of waiting. I call in sick to work. I don't answer the phone. Every slight tickle in my throat, every tiny ache, sends jolts of panic through me. Is it starting? Is this it? I research Xylo's Marburg variant obsessively, falling down horrifying rabbit holes of medical journals and fragmented news reports. It's as bad as Henderson said. Worse. A chimera virus, the contagiousness of the worst respiratory plagues combined with the horrific, hemorrhagic progression of Marburg. Fever spiking rapidly, agonizing muscle pain. Then the capillaries start leaking. Bruises bloom without cause. Blood seeps from gums, nose, even the eyes. Internal organs liquefy. Death comes from massive systemic failure, often within 10 days of symptom onset. Universally terminal. My phone buzzes constantly. Group texts from the family. A toxic stew of panic, blame, and desperate denial. Dad, this is insane. He was just coughing. Old people cough. Henderson's senile. That doctor friend of mine in infectious diseases says Marburg isn't even confirmed outside of isolated labs. Salomon was messing with us. Psychological warfare. Lydia, psychological. Charles, I have a fever. 100.4. And my throat is scratchy. That monster did this. He infected us. I'm calling my lawyer. I'm suing the estate. Frank, my head it's pounding. Since last night. Like a vice. Lydia, are you sure about the fever? Daniel, anyone? Emmy, myalgia. Started this morning. Feels like I've been hit by a truck. And chills. The admission sends a fresh wave of terror through me. It's not psychosomatic. The deep bone ache is real. The chills come in waves. Dad's bluster stops. Lydia's texts devolve into incoherent sobbing emojis and voice messages choked with tears and rage. Frank stops responding altogether. 3 days after the dinner. The fever hits me like a freight train. 1 minute him shivering under 3 blankets, the next him burning up, drenched in sweat. My thermometer reads 103.1. The headache Frank described feels like an axe embedded in my skull. The muscle pain intensifies. Every movement agony. Fear is no longer abstract, it's a living thing, clawing at my insides. The envelope. Salomon's final word. It sits on my coffee table, mocking me. I haven't touched it. What more could he possibly say? What worse twist could he add? Driven by a morbid compulsion, I pick it up. My hands shake violently. It's heavier than paper should be. I tear it open. Inside, no letter, no final curse, just a single sheet of expensive stationery clipped to a thick document bearing the seal of Salomon's law firm, Chadwick and Graves. The sheet has a short message, written in that same spidery hand, now noticeably shakier. Daniel, by now, you understand. The scales are balanced. The legacy secured. Read the codicil. Understand the future you funded. It holds more promise than you ever did. The cold finality of it steals my breath. The scales are balanced, as if murdering his entire bloodline was some kind of ethical transaction. The legacy secured. Secured for what? With trembling, feverish hands, I flip to the document. It's a codicil to Salomon's last will and testament, dated just 2 weeks before the dinner. Legalese swims before my burning eyes, but the intent is horrifyingly clear. It revokes all previous bequests, every trust fund, every property allocation, every stock portfolio earmarked for Charles, Lydia, Franklin, Daniel, and any of our descendants erased, null and void. In its place, a single, staggering directive, the entirety of my estate, including all real property, securities, holdings, and liquid assets, valued conservatively at $2.7 billion, is hereby irrevocably bequeathed to establish and perpetually fund the Salomon Institute for Virological Eradication (SIV). The sole, explicit mandate of SIV shall be the research, development, and deployment of a universal cure and preventative vaccine for the Xylose Marburg variant XMV and all known hemorrhagic fever viruses. Funding shall prioritize rapid human trials, global distribution infrastructure, and accessibility to all populations, regardless of economic status. This directive supersedes all prior wills and testamentary documents. No provision is made for any blood relative, descendant, or prior named beneficiary. Execution of this will is contingent upon independent medical verification of my demise from XMV, and the subsequent confirmed demise of Charles Salomon, Lydia Salomon Covington, Franklin Salomon, and Daniel Salomon from the same pathogen, prior to any distribution of assets to any other entity or individual. I read it twice, 3 times. The words blur, swim, but their meaning sears into my brain. He hadn't just killed us. Had turned us into the catalyst. Our deaths weren't just punishment, they were the funding mechanism. The entire Salomon fortune, the fortune we'd neglected him for, the fortune we'd waited for, the fortune that poisoned our relationships was now locked away, inaccessible to anyone until we were all dead. And not just dead. Dead from the very disease he gave us. Our corpses were the key to unlocking billions, dedicated solely to curing the plague he unleashed upon us. The sheer, diabolical genius of it is breathtaking. The ultimate revenge. We died knowing our suffering, our terror, our agonizing end, was directly financing the hope for a future we would never see. A cure we made possible by dying. A vaccine developed too late for us, funded by the wealth we coveted, had turned his fortune into a monument built on our graves, ensuring his legacy wasn't us, his failed descendants, but the salvation of countless strangers from the horror had weaponized against his own blood. A hysterical laugh bubbles up from my raw throat, turning into a racking cough that brings coppery phlegm the back of my hand. I stare at the crimson smear. Stage 2. The bleeding starts. The point of no return. The rage returns, white hot and all-consuming, not just at Salomon, but at myself, at Dad, at Lydia, at Frank, at our selfishness, our blindness, our petty grievances that pushed a brilliant, broken man to become a monster. We made him this. Our neglect was the petri dish that cultivated this final, devastating strain of hatred. My phone buzzes. It's a news alert. I swipe it open with a trembling, blood-smeared finger. The headline blares, Biotech Titan Salomon dead at 89. Cause withheld pending family notification. Hayes gone. The architect. The first domino has fallen. Another notification pings. A text from Lydia. Just a photo. It's her arm. Livid purple bruises bloom. Under the skin, grotesque flowers. The caption. It's starting. He won. Frank is dead. The call comes 2 days later from a hospital social worker, Franklin Salomon, admitted with high fever, severe hemorrhaging, and multi-organ failure. Pronounced dead at 4:17 a.m. Cause of death, suspected viral hemorrhagic fever. Specific variant pending CDC confirmation. We all know. Dad leaves a voicemail, his voice thick with tears and the wet, ragged breathing of the damned. Hayes gone, Danny. Frank's gone. It's real. Oh God, it's real. My own symptoms accelerate with terrifying speed. The fever is constant, a raging inferno. The headaches are blinding. The muscle pain is unrelenting agony. Bruises cover my body like a morbid map. My gums bleed constantly. Yesterday, I woke up with blood crusted on my pillow from my nose. This morning, the whites of my eyes are streaked with red. I lay on my bathroom floor, too weak to get back to bed. The cool towels are a small mercy against my burning skin. The envelope and the codicil lie nearby. I don't need to read it again. Its message is etched into my dying cells. The future you funded. Images flicker through my delirium, not of my life, not of lost loves or missed opportunities, but of a future news report years from now. A solemn-faced anchor, a breakthrough at the Salomon Institute for Virological Eradication, a cure for Xylose Marburg and related hemorrhagic fevers, funded by the late billionaire's unprecedented bequest, saving millions of children in some distant, vulnerable country receiving a vaccine. A lab tech holding a vial of clear liquid, the cure, all stamped with the Salomon name. His legacy, built on our bones, financed by our screams. The rage is gone, burned away by the fever. All that's left is a terrible, hollow understanding. He didn't just balance the scales, he shattered them. He turned his dying breath, our dying breaths, into something monstrously productive. We were the necessary fuel, the sacrificial lambs on the altar of his posthumous redemption. A final, wet cough tears through me. Blood sprays onto the white tiles, bright and shocking. It's everywhere. Too much. The room spins. Darkness crowds the edges of my vision. He won. The thought is my last coherent one, not of fear, not of regret, just a cold, bleak acknowledgement of his absolute, devastating victory. The legacy secured. The darkness closes in, thick and absolute. The only sound is the ragged, bubbling rasp of my own breath, fading into silence. Funded by blood, secured by death. The Salomon Institute would open its doors. The cure would be found, and the man who paid for it all, with the lives of everyone he was supposed to love, would finally, truly, close the door on his family, forever.